By the time Uncharted 3 was released, I was pretty burnt out on Nathan Drake's story. I was ready for a new tale, a new adventure, and most importantly, a new setting. December 2011 rolls around and Naughty Dog fulfills my wish. The Last of Us is formally announced and my appetite was outrageous. The announcement trailer got my 17-year-old ass hyped, needless to say. On June 14th, 2013, the game finally dropped on the PlayStation 3. I went to the midnight release and started playing as soon as I got home. It took me 3 days to beat. Honestly, I didn't know how I felt about the ending at first. After subsequent playthroughs, I came to the conclusion that it was brilliant. You play as Joel, a grizzled survivor, 20 years after an involved subspecies of the cordyceps fungi started infecting humans. You're tasked with escorting Ellie, a 14-year-old girl, across the United States in hope of finding a cure. Ellie is immune to the fungus, and the rebel group, the Fireflies, believe that she's vital in finding the cure, to reverse what seemed irreversible. The real theme, in my opinion, is regret. Both of our protagonists hold a great deal of regret and guilt. From my perspective, it's about Joel finding himself again, the person before the outbreak. Throughout the story, he builds his father-like relationship with Ellie that you start feeling like she's your daughter too. The writing is so well done in this game, and they really make you feel for these characters. You have Ellie, who feels at fault for her friends' deaths, although in actuality she had zero control over any death. She feels so much guilt, and she begins wishing she would have died too. Joel is very similar. He feels at fault for the death of his daughter during the first night of the infection. The whole game is about these two characters growing as people, not letting their past and sadness define who they are. Throughout the whole game, you slowly start seeing the survivor guilt melt away, and visually you begin to see them become more attached to one another, to the extent that they'd sacrifice themselves to save one another. This is especially shown in the last two chapters in the epilogue. The game shows you how much desperation is inhabiting this universe, but never lets go of the idea of continuing to have hope. It shows us what most humans would do if we are faced with a life or death situation regarding our children. In this universe, someone who's lost everything becomes jaded. When they find something worth living for again, they become hopeful. When somebody tries to take that newly found connection away from them, they become dangerous. They become selfish, they become emotional, and most importantly, they would choose the greater evil over losing that personal connection again. The Last of Us is my personal game of the decade, and if you haven't played it already, I highly recommend it. The last thing I have to remark is its multiplayer. It slaps hard. I sunk probably 400 hours alone into the survivor matches. Only fond memories of the multiplayer modes. Another great thing the game does is world building and environmental storytelling. From seeing a chair barricading a door to finding an artifact telling the story of someone back when the outbreak happened, it's all just brings you in together on this world and makes it feel believable that there's real people actually living here and surviving 20 years prior to your arrival in this scene. I do have a few gripes with the game, however. For example, the level length. I wholeheartedly wish they would have broken up the Pittsburgh segments and put more time into the other levels. Salt Lake City, towards the end of the game, could have definitely used a little bit more content. I understand it's a country-trotting video game, but you spend so much time in Boston, which is needed to set up the rest of the game. I love the characters in the Pittsburgh chapter and how Ellie reacts to seeing another child for the first time in a long time. I just wish it was a bit shorter and maybe could have allowed Sam and Henry to develop a little bit more and have their stories end after Tommy's dam. The combat can also be a little wonky. I personally never had a problem with it, but I can see where people are coming from whenever they criticize it. The stealth sometimes doesn't work. Sometimes picking up an artifact doesn't count. It's just weird little bugs and glitches. And I can just see how people were kind of disappointed by it, especially after playing the Uncharted series and how tight the gameplay was in that. But hopefully the sequel that's coming out later this year can improve on the game by a lot. Build more characters, or I already heard they're going to be having more open linear segments in the levels, which is pretty cool. I can't wait to see that. But that is it for this video. It was meant to come out a little bit ago, but something came up. And that's all for me, really. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys all had an amazing new year. Thanks.